Imagine sitting in a doctor's office. You are 63 years old. You have your whole retirement planned out. Hawaii, gardening, spending time with the grandkids. And then the doctor looks you in the eye and tells you that you have pancreatic adenocarcinoma. That is the most lethal form of pancreatic cancer. It is a death sentence. The statistics are brutal. Most people are dead within a year. The 5-year survival rate is abysmal. This happened to a woman named Claire Haser. She was told to get her affairs in order. Her doctors gave her a year, tops. She looked at the surgical option, a brutal procedure called the Whipple, and she said no. She decided she would rather enjoy the little time she had left than spend it recovering from a surgery that probably wouldn't save her anyway. She went home to die. But here is the thing, Alex. She didn't die. 5 years later, she went in for a scan for something totally unrelated, and her doctors were baffled. The tumor was gone, vanished. Her pancreas was clean. And when she tried to tell her doctors about the lifestyle changes she had made, do you know what they said? They said it had no medical value. They called it a fluke.
Whoa, hold on. A fluke? That is a pretty massive fluke. I mean, we are talking about pancreatic cancer here. That does not just go away on its own. If my mechanic fixed my car by accident, I would still want to know how he did it. But you are saying the medical establishment just shrugged it off? That sounds, well, it sounds unscientific, Sarah. If someone survives an incurable disease, shouldn't that be the very first thing we study? It reminds me of that quote by Kierkegaard that the author uses. There are 2 ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. So, welcome to the show, everyone. Today we are diving into Cured, the life-changing science of spontaneous healing by Dr. Jeffrey Rediger. And I have to ask, right off the bat, Sarah, is this going to be a bunch of woo-woo magic, or is there actual science here? Because I am skeptical when I hear the word miracle.
I love your skepticism, Alex. It is exactly what Dr. Jeffrey Rediger felt. He is not some New Age guru. He is a psychiatrist on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. He has a master's in divinity from Princeton. He is a man of science and logic. He spent 17 years investigating these so-called flukes, which in the medical world are formally called spontaneous remissions. And what he found is going to blow your mind. He realized that these cases are not actually spontaneous. That word implies they happen without cause, like a lightning strike. But Dr. Rediger argues that there is a cause. There is a mechanism. It is just that medicine has been looking in the wrong place. We are so focused on pathology, on studying the disease, that we never study the people who actually get better against the odds. He compares it to the Olympics. If someone breaks a world record, like Bob Beamon did in the 1960s with his long jump, scientists rush to study him. How did his muscles work? What was his technique? But in medicine, if someone survives the unsurvivable, we look away. We are embarrassed by it because it does not fit our models. Dr. Rediger says we need to treat these survivors like Olympic athletes of health. We need to reverse engineer their recovery.
Okay, that is a compelling analogy. If there are Olympic athletes of the immune system, we definitely should be studying their training regimen. But you mentioned a mechanism. You are implying that these people did something specific to trigger this healing. It wasn't just luck. So, what is the mechanism? Is it a pill, a diet, positive thinking? Because if you tell me they just thought their cancer away, I am going to have a hard time buying it. I need the nuts and bolts. Sarah, how does a tumor physically dissolve? Where does it go? The book mentions the history of this, right? It seems like we have known about the body's ability to heal for a long time, but maybe we forgot it?
It is not just positive thinking, though the mind plays a huge role, which we will get to. But let's start with the biology. The history here is fascinating. Back in the 1890s, there was a surgeon named Dr. William Coley. He had a patient, a young woman named Bessie, who died of a bone sarcoma. He was devastated. He started digging through hospital records and found a similar case where a patient survived. But here's the weird part. The survivor had a massive post-surgical infection, a terrible fever. Coley realized that the infection had spiked the patient's fever so high that it woke up the immune system, which then attacked the cancer. He developed something called Coley's toxins. He essentially injected patients with bacteria to give them a fever on purpose. And it worked. Tumors melted away. But then radiation and chemotherapy came along, which were more predictable and profitable, and Coley's work was largely forgotten. We swapped waking up the immune system for killing the cancer directly, even if it meant killing healthy cells too.
That is wild. So, getting sick actually made them well? It sounds like the fever was a boot camp for the white blood cells. It reminds me of how we treat fevers today. As soon as I get a temperature, I pop a pill to bring it down. But maybe I am suppressing the very mechanism that is trying to help me? The book also talks about Dr. Steven Rosenberg in the 1960s, right? The guy who is now a big deal at the National Cancer Institute. He had a similar experience with a patient who had stomach cancer that just vanished. It seems like these miracles keep popping up throughout history, and they all point to the immune system. But wait, if the immune system is so powerful, why doesn't it catch cancer every time? Why do we get sick in the first place? It feels like my immune system is sleeping on the job half the time.
That is the million-dollar question. Dr. Rediger explains that our immune system is like a specialized army. We have these incredible cells called natural killer cells. I know, intense name, right? They are the James Bonds of the body. They patrol our system, looking for rogue cells, cells that have mutated or gone wrong, and they take them out before they can become tumors. We all have cancer cells developing in us all the time, but usually our natural killer cells handle it. The problem arises when our immune system gets overwhelmed, distracted, or suppressed, and this leads us to the great debate of the 19th century, the germ versus the soil. Louis Pasteur, the father of antibiotics, said the germ is everything we have to kill the invader. But his rival, Antoine Béchamp, said no, the terrain is everything. If the soil of your body is healthy, the germ cannot take root. Doctor. Rediger argues that modern medicine is obsessed with the germ, the tumor, the virus, and has completely ignored the soil. We need to be gardeners of our own bodies.
I like the gardening analogy. It makes sense. If I throw seeds on concrete, nothing grows. If I throw them in fertile soil, I get a jungle. So, if we want to be cured, we need to fix our soil. Doctor? Rediger identifies 4 pillars of health that these spontaneous survivors all seem to address. Let's break them down. The first one is nutrition, and man, this is a minefield. One day eggs are good, the next day they kill you. Keto, paleo, vegan, everyone is shouting. But the book tells the story of Tom Wood, a guy with severe type 2 diabetes who completely reversed it. And he didn't do it with a magic pill. He did it by changing what he put in his mouth. What was the secret? Because I feel like I eat pretty healthy, but maybe my definition of healthy is wrong.
Tom's story is incredible. He had been on insulin for years, getting worse and worse, dealing with neuropathy and heart scares. He finally tried a nutrient-dense diet. The key word here is density. It is not just about calories. It is about how many nutrients you get per calorie. Dr. Rediger talks about the work of tea, Colin Campbell, and the China study, which is the massive study that showed the link between animal protein and chronic disease. The general consensus among these survivors isn't a specific fad diet, but it leans heavily towards whole, plant-based foods. They eliminate processed sugars and flours. Think about it. Sugar is fuel for cancer. And processed foods are full of emulsifiers, chemicals that scrub away the protective lining of our gut. Our gut is where 80% of our immune system lives. If you are eating processed junk, you are basically tearing down the walls of your fortress and inviting the enemy in. Tom switched to a plant-heavy, nutrient-dense diet and literally cured his incurable diabetes. His doctor had never seen anything like it in 20 years.
Okay, so pillar 1 is nutrition. Stop eating processed garbage and eat real plants. Got it. But lots of people eat salads and still get sick. There has to be more to it. This brings us to the second pillar, the immune system and stress. And this is where the book gets really interesting about the mind-body connection. We have heard stress kills, but Dr. Rediger gets into the biology of it. He talks about the fight or flight mode versus rest and digest. I feel like I am in fight or flight from the moment my alarm goes off until I pass out at night. Is that why we are all getting sick? Are we literally stressing our immune systems to death?
Absolutely. Dr. Rediger explains that when you are in fight or flight, which is the sympathetic nervous system, your body shuts down long-term building projects. It stops digestion, it stops immune repair, and it pumps out cortisol. This is great if you are running from a tiger. It is terrible if you are just sitting in traffic worrying about an email. Your immune cells actually have little receptors on them for neuropeptides, which are the chemicals of emotion. This means your immune system is literally listening to your thoughts. If you are constantly anxious, your immune cells are paralyzed. The survivor's Dr. Rediger studied shifted into the parasympathetic mode rest and digest. This is where healing happens. They didn't just relax a little. They fundamentally changed their relationship with stress. They quit soul-sucking jobs, they left toxic marriages, or they simply changed their internal reaction to the world.
That is profound. Your immune system is listening to your thoughts. That is a scary thought, considering what goes through my head during rush hour. But let's look at the story of Daniel. This one really stuck with me. He was a young man in the 1950s with aggressive testicular cancer. It had spread to his lungs. He was a goner. He was also deeply repressed, full of guilt and shame, struggling with his strict religious upbringing. Then, he decides to get married and be ordained as a minister before he dies. He has this massive psychological shift. He feels love for the first time, and his tumors disappear. During his wedding, just poof, gone. How do we explain that? Is love a chemotherapy drug?
In a way, yes. Love and connection are potent biological forces. Daniel's story illustrates the third pillar, healing your identity. Before his diagnosis, Daniel was living a life that wasn't his. He was trapped in a false self trying to please others, living by rules he hated, filled with self-loathing. This creates chronic, low-level stress that never turns off. When he accepted his death, he stopped pretending. He embraced his true desires to marry the woman he loved, to find his own spiritual path. He dropped the mask. Dr. Rediger found this pattern over and over. People who experience spontaneous remission often undergo a massive identity shift. They stop being who they think they should be and start being who they actually are. It is like they take the parking brake off their immune system. The energy that was being used to hold up a false facade is suddenly freed up to heal the body.
So, authenticity is the medicine. That is heavy. It makes you wonder how many of us are making ourselves sick just by trying to fit in or please our parents. But let's talk about the environment. The book spends a lot of time in Brazil. Dr. Rediger visited these healing centers like the one John of God ran. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room. John of God turned out to be a monster, a criminal. Dr. Rediger acknowledges this. But he also saw people getting well there. He argues it wasn't the healer, it was the environment, the community, the food, the belief. Can you unpack that? Because it is tricky to separate the miracle from the con man.
It is a crucial distinction. Dr. Rediger is very clear. The healing power wasn't in the man, it was in the conditions created there. Think about what happened to people when they went to Brazil. They left their stressful jobs and homes. They traveled to a beautiful, warm place. They ate fresh, organic, nutrient-dense food every day. They were surrounded by a community of people who believed 100% that healing was possible. They spent hours a day meditating and praying. They were bathed in love and acceptance. That is the ultimate terrain restoration. It hits all the pillars: nutrition, stress reduction, and a shift in identity. The healer was just a focal point, a placebo trigger maybe. But the real work was being done by the lifestyle overhaul and the collective belief. It shows that you don't need a guru. You need to create that environment for yourself. You need to build your own Brazil right where you live.
Building your own Brazil. I like that. But it is hard, Sarah. We have bills to pay. We can't all fly to the tropics and meditate for 6 hours a day. But I guess that brings us back to Claire, the woman from the beginning. She didn't go to Brazil. She stayed in Portland. But she did something similar, didn't she? She rented a beach house with her friends. She laughed. She let go of old grudges. She prepared to die. And in doing so, she started to really live. It is almost a paradox. You have to accept the end to find a new beginning. She stopped fighting the war on cancer and started nurturing her life. Is that the shift? Moving from fighting disease to cultivating health?
That is exactly it. We treat illness like a war. We attack, we cut, we burn. And sometimes that is necessary. Dr. Rediger is not saying you should reject surgery or chemotherapy. Those are powerful tools, but they are insufficient on their own because they don't change the terrain that allowed the cancer to grow in the first place. If you cut out a tumor but leave the body in a state of chronic inflammation, stress, and malnutrition, the cancer is likely to come back. The spontaneous survivors did both, or sometimes, like Claire, just the lifestyle part. They fundamentally altered the soil. They flooded their bodies with the signals of safety and life. They moved from a state of fear, which suppresses immunity, to a state of love and zest. And biologically, that is a massive signal to the body. It says, we are safe. We are thriving. It is time to repair.
It makes you rethink the whole concept of a diagnosis. When a doctor says incurable, they mean incurable by our current medical treatments. They don't necessarily mean incurable by your body. It is a semantic difference, but a huge one. Dr. Rediger talks about the nocebo effect, the opposite of placebo. If a doctor tells you you have 3 months to live, you might die in 3 months just because you believe it so strongly. Your body shuts down. These survivors rejected the prognosis. They respected the diagnosis. They knew they were sick, but they rejected the timeline. They took back their agency. That seems to be a common thread. They became the CEO of their own health.
Yes, agency is key. And hope. Not false hope, but grounded hope. The hope that says, I can change my terrain. So, Alex, we have covered the pillars. Nutrition. Eat real food, mostly plants. Immune system. Manage stress, move into rest and digest. Identity. Live authentically, feel loved, let go of the false self. It sounds simple, but it is actually a radical overhaul of how we live. It challenges the silver bullet mentality of Western medicine. We want a pill to fix us. But Dr. Rediger is saying the cure is not a pill. The cure is a life. It is a way of being. And the most exciting part? You don't have to wait until you have stage 4 cancer to apply this. These are the same principles that prevent disease and create vitality.
That is the takeaway for me. I don't have a terminal illness, thankfully, but I definitely have stress. I eat too much sugar. I wear a mask of busy professional sometimes. Reading this book made me realize I am neglecting my own soil. I am letting the weeds grow. And if I wait until the house is on fire to look for a hose, it might be too late. Dr. Rediger's work is a wake-up call. It is asking us to improve the quality of our questions. Instead of asking, what pill do I take? We should ask, what is my body trying to tell me? Or what in my life is toxic? It puts the power back in our hands. And that is both terrifying and liberating.
It is. And remember, this is scientifically grounded. This isn't magic. It is biology. It is the science of possibility. We are only just beginning to understand the limits of the human body. People like Claire, Daniel, and Tom, they are the pioneers. They are showing us what is possible when we align our bodies, minds, and spirits. So, listeners, take a look at your own life. How is your soil? Are you feeding your immune system or starving it? Are you living your truth or someone else's? You don't have to change everything overnight. Just start. Eat a real apple. Take a deep breath. Forgive someone. You might just be saving your own life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Cured. Here is to your health.